So I think we have about half an hour for questions.
You didn't ask if I had half an hour. Okay.
Okay, that was okay. My assumption. I apologize. So I will just say, I think what's interesting in the we gave it a kind of subtitle for this evening, debunking the myths, because I think that in that appendix at the end, Benny really skewered some of the so-called facts that we're told are indeed facts. And I think we had an event here actually a few months ago where we were looking at the relationship between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. And I think, like anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism relies on people having to believe things which are not true. Right? Yeah. Right. So as Benny Began just showed, refugees, when are refugees not really refugees? Only in the Palestinian context. When is a humanitarian crisis not really a humanitarian crisis? In the Palestinian context. And I think this is very revealing and illustrative of what we're dealing with and what organizations like Memory are so useful and helpful for. So let's take some questions. Madam, please.
Yeah, I have a question about understanding or knowing how to communicate with others about the figures that Hamas is giving as to how many children we have murdered and how many people we have killed with the bombings. How do we respond when it seems very clear to me that they have no way of knowing how many people we've killed? They have very little communications. They put their own people in the front line. How do you suggest we talk about the numbers?
So just before, I want to repeat the question in brief, just for our Zoom audience, that it's a question about the numbers that we're getting from Gaza of Palestinian civilians killed, the numbers which clearly come from, we're getting from Hamas themselves. And the question asked, how can we actually know if the numbers are accurate and when they, presumably they themselves don't actually know.
Question was, how do we communicate? Right?
I'm sorry?
How do we communicate?
Well, how do we respond when their representatives make these claims?
It's dealing with the numbers per se, I think is not a good tactic. And the reason is the following. What they publish is, say, 20,000, of which thousands are children. What would I say? Only 12,000 and only 3,000 children. It's a great tragedy even to touch it, whatever. 1,000 children, 100 children. So the only way to really tackle it is to ask, why are these cruel Jews doing it? And my answer when I was asked is, you, Mr. So-and-so, or Mrs. So-and-so, or Miss So-and-so, or the mix between them, I don't know, whatever. You agree with me that the Hamas attack must be retaliated, but more than that, that murderous organization should be wiped out of the face of the earth. If someone agrees with that, then you tell me how. You give me another method with which you can do it. We attack them from time to time, sometimes, and many killed, and houses there were demolished, and our soldiers were killed. It was okay for a time. And all that time, they were planning this unheard of, unthinkable attack. The only way is to eradicate that organization, to eradicate its soldiers and its commanders. And the only way to do it is by foot, boots on the ground, as the Americans, maybe the British say, I don't know. And of course, it entails great difficulties. According to the international war laws, we warned the population in northern Gaza. We gave them due time. Hamas interfered with their movement southwards. It's quite an operation, 1 million of them Now you could say, oh, what did we do? What did you do? 1.2 million people are refugees, horrendous. Yes, but what's the alternative? To let them grow again, assemble Iranian, Qatari money and Iranian weapons through tunnels under the Egyptian border near Rafah, with the Egyptians not very efficient in blocking it. That's I think a more to the point answer. I didn't hear. I didn't meet with many people. I didn't hear a proposal. Okay, I suggest to do it and eliminating those casualties in Gaza, meaning the Arab casualties. I don't know. It's a bad world. It's an awful world. You remember the show, Stop the World. I want to get down.
I want to get off.
Out?
Off.
Off. I want to get off. Excuse me. I told you it's not my mother's tongue. Okay. So I think that would be the answer. Many people wouldn't like it. But there's always a but. But there must be another way. Well, I couldn't think about it. My government couldn't think about it. The United States of America and its leadership until this moment couldn't think about a different way, right?
Okay. A lot of questions. Okay, so Robbie at the back.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much for your presentation. I really, really enjoyed it.
I didn't enjoy it. Bad issue.
I have one observation and one question. My observation is, and I'm not a statistician, and I haven't really looked into it, but I don't know if the comparison with Jordan is appropriate. I mean, out of the 11 million people living in Jordan, some estimates say that 4 million are Bedouins, and it's very possible for cultural reasons that Bedouins don't pursue higher education or even higher income, then maybe it's not an appropriate comparison. But, you know, katonti, I have to look into that further.
Give me another suggestion.
Okay, I don't know.
Which,
My question,
okay,
What's the question?
My question is,
but no, excuse me, but the numbers don't know it. The numbers. So they are Bedouins, right? But this is a so-called kingdom. It's a sovereign state. It's an ally of the United States. There is no humanitarian crisis there. We sell them water, and there's a grave water problem there. But I didn't find another appropriate comparison. Yes, there are Bedouins there. By the way, the royalty are Bedouins. So I still thought and still think it's appropriate.
my question is, I met you on the streets of Jerusalem about 30 years ago when I first met Aliyah 33 years ago.
I'm
And
still here.
we had a very brief conversation, and I found you to be very strong in your opinions. And I was curious up until October
I got
6th.
older.
Right?
I'm older now.
So like I asked you, up until October 6th, had you at all softened in any of your positions or changed any of your positions in the past 30 years?
On what? I mean, I did soften my position.
The question was about whether in the past 30 years, when the questioner first met Benny Begin, whether Benny has softened his political position.
You're younger than me, I think. And as you all know, you mellow with time. And I agree. And I told you, I was quick to become furious at the time. When I was 30 years ago, I wouldn't let anyone win a debate with me. And now I say, all right, let you have it. But if you ask about basic politics, I needn't have to. We were correct on the dot. We hit the nail on its head all the time, all over, since the foundation of the revisionist movement, all the time. that blending of national liberal regime, national liberal theory, national liberal approach, and a national code in connection with this presentation, I think, I would say I never changed my mind that Judea, Samaria, and Gaza are part of our historical homeland. And I don't know how many years I'm granted, but as long as I'm here and my mind is somewhat clear, I will never agree to relinquishing willingly a part of my homeland, and of course not the establishment of a foreign rule in my homeland. So here I am 30 years later.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
I'm not running for any elections. I'm 81, it's a little late.
Bye.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned in 1950, Egypt never annexed Gaza. Could you speak about why not, as you know, like Jordan annexed Judah and Shomron, and why wouldn't they want it to have annexed as part of their territory and all the consequences that came out here?
Oh, okay. The question is why Egypt didn't annex Gaza, whereas Jordan did annex Judea and Samaria, and what were the consequences?
I didn't really study this important issue. I can guess it's a nuisance. No, it's a nuisance. They knew these people, and they had so much trouble. There are 100 million people, very difficult to take care of. And at that time, there were less Egyptian citizens, but very, very grave problems. So why do they need that? But I'll have to read about it, and to the next lecture, I hope I'm no better.
Okay.
But still, it's a fact.
I've been informed that the Zoom audience do not need me to repeat the question, so I will not repeat the question.
Put the microphone closer.
Sorry?
He has to talk closer to.
Okay, listen. The gentleman at the back there, yes, with in the black sweater.
We hear a lot now about predictions for the day after in Gaza. What would your comments be?
I would really hesitate to comment. We all know, A, it's a very complex situation. B, there are traps on the road. I'm not a part of and parcel. The last time I attended a cabinet meeting was back in May or April 2013. So of course I read like everyone, but I would be very hesitant to give an advice or opine. I would agree. I can say that of course the Palestinian Authority with Fatah, led by Fatah.
Speak into the mic.
No, led by Fatah, are not only morally incapable of doing it, technically, they have a hard time minding their own shop in Judea and Samaria. And when they were kicked off from Gaza in 2007, it was not totally coincidental. They cannot. And then on top of it, or on the lower level, they would be able, I don't see who would be able to reconstitute, to erect Gaza from these ruins. No, it would take much more than that. So on that, I agree with the Prime Minister and many others who now voice it on both sides of the aisle. But then, more than the national force, I wouldn't count on a UN force. Okay, that's for sure. But that's about all I can say in public. Okay, I can talk it over with my wife, but she keeps secrets.
Okay, there's a lot of questions. We only about 10 minutes. Yeah, gentlemen.
Given the importance, the security importance of the Jewish settlement in Gaza that you discussed, that was understood then, now and more. How do you explain from 1967 to this engagement, there was only approximately, I guess, under 10,000 people, Jews who settled there, and especially when you compare the far greater numbers of Jews who moved in Shimon.
I can think of two answers to the one. There were in Gaza. There was a limited place for Jewish settlements. They went to the so-called Muasi, which was not inhabited by Arabs, and even now, most are not inhabited, which is why many of the people who moved from northern Gaza to southern Gaza were directed to that area called the Muasi. Then also it was not that attractive to many people. The communities were farmers. They were farming, and a little more remote, even psychologically, but more remote. That would not attract too many people. Villages, there were villages, and not most people on earth move to urban areas and not to farming. And it even now becomes even a stronger movement. People flock on cities, poor cities with people who reside on the streets, but there is no parnousa in villages all around the world. So it may explain it, but I'm not sure. But I think it's rather revealing. There was the Labour Party leadership which initiated it. I think most people don't recognize it anymore. And they are good people.
Okay. Yes, with the glasses.
Shalom, toda shebata. If you could comment on the Netanyahu government's preference for money and other things to Hamas over the Palestinian Authority?
No. No.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I wouldn't.
Okay.
Why not?
Excuse me? Why not? Because first I'd like to adhere to the subject as was defined for me by our leader tonight. And I don't think it is appropriate. I think maybe you didn't know it, of course, but it's been maybe 6 months since I last gave any interview to any station, TV or radio. Part of it, most part of it, is the very fact that when you become older, they don't ask you anymore, which is the truth. But had they asked me last week or a month ago or next week, I would refrain from it. Situation is complex enough. Let the people do their best. And I don't think to tell people to give advice from the terrorists, and especially in difficult times where we're in dire straits, is inappropriate. So I refrain from it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, madam.
I wanted to ask, it appears to me that one of the main problems that's always been was UNRWA.
Wait, I'm sorry? UNRWA, yeah.
The formation of a separate refugee identity for this one particular people, and that's perpetuated all the problem. First of all, why did we ever agree to it? And second of all, to agree to play ball with them.
Why did we agree?
And second of all, do you think that we can turn back time and at this point turn around to the United Nations or whatever and say no more?
since 2007, 2006, Israel is out of Gaza. So it would be presumptuous, I think, to tell the world, and even our friends in America, that we don't agree to it. Meaning what? What do we do? The cabinet ministers and others declare time and again on a daily basis, Israel does not intend to govern Gaza. So they could say, who are you to tell us what the UNRWA should look like? It's an international issue. It's an issue of the UN. It's totally politicized. And I'll add to what you said. It's not only the very issue of the perpetuation of the refugee status. It's what they teach in their schools, which is horrendous.
Yeah.
And it's being dominated by Hamas anyhow. So, of course, every decent person should object to this perpetuation. But then, I don't know, you have to dismember it, to abolish it. I don't know which majority you need to amass in which organ of the UN. Security Council, General Assembly. Usually it's seldom that we enjoy majority in these organs, right? So, but it's a problem. I think that by now, that's what I hear, more and more abroad do understand, and they read more closely. It's been around, people here are publishing it, We in Memory and other organizations, and Itamar Marcus are publishing the content of their books for years, maybe 15, maybe 20 years. Who cares? I hear now more voices because now people in their imagination can tie in those books and their contents with this October 7th brutality. Okay? But that's the best I can say. I'm sorry, I usually disappoint you in my end.
Very important detail. Very recently, Switzerland stopped paying UNRWA. Germany is considering stopping payment.
Great. Okay, so it does support my contention. All right. Okay, we have some.
Okay. Yes, Moshe.
The government says that they want
Our
government says that they want to have a denazification policy, or a policy that was like the denazification policy that the Allies imposed on Germany and Japan. Similar to that, to de-Hamas-anize, whatever. Ariel Kahana wrote a piece today in Israel Alone, in which he described how difficult it was for the Allies to carry out this policy, even though, I mean, it was they did it eventually. But he says that, and this is what I wanted you to comment on, it would be very difficult for Israel to do something like this in Gaza, given the support that Hamas has throughout the world, the Muslim world especially. Do you think this is a realistic goal?
Maybe I'll have to speak with Ariel and ask him what he really meant in what he wrote in the article. I'm not sure we need to resort to concrete examples. And I think what the cabinet resolved, which is not totally clear anyhow, is good enough for me, bad enough for them, not for the government, for Hamas. We should eradicate Hamas first as a military organization. Have to eradicate their people, their leadership, their materials, their ammunition. Only the second stage someone will have to ask, all right, following the former questions, how do we prevent a situation by which youngsters, people, boys 10 years old, don't get all that propaganda, and in summer camps learn how to shoot, and the books, the math books, include exercises. So how many soldiers, Israeli soldiers, would be killed by our people if we launch this or that? That's a second stage. I don't see, it is not compatible with the Israeli plan to withdraw, at least in the civil sense, from governing Gaza. So it's more difficult than that. Let me add parenthetically, it's almost the same books in Judea and Samaria.
Yes. Yes.
So if we do it, we have to do it across the board, right? But this is a part of the difficulty. Okay, let me tell you, it's a difficult situation.
You think we can do it?
No. When you ask specifically, do you think that we Israelis can do it? Do the Israeli government can do it? No, we don't have the power to do it, specifically because we declare we are not going to be there. We're not going to take care of their schools and their hospitals and their transportation. That's what my cabinet says. I think there's a lot of logic in it. We're not going to control Gaza anymore. And what was. We cannot go back to 2005 or 4 or even in 1992. I don't think so. But my conclusion arises from the basic conditions that we declare we would like to see. But let's eat the cake by pieces, all right? First, just eradicate them as an organization and as a military organization. The rest will be, we have to leave something for others.
Okay, let's have one last question. There's a gentleman here who's had his hand up for a while. Yes.
Dr. Bergen, thank you very much. And continuing on the subject of the United Nations, these words are so very important nowadays. Ushmu, don't pay any attention to them. But considering the wording of the United Nations Secretary, which was been quite an important part of your discussion today, has, besides Gilad Erdan asking him to, calling on him to resign, has anyone put him in a picture and explained to him about the 50 years and the suffocation and everything else? Is he interested? Does he want to know? Or does he remain the way he is? Has anyone explained to him, and what do you think he's interested in?
Okay, I know some people didn't hear that, so I'm just going to briefly repeat that the question asked about specifically about Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, and whether someone has explained to him the things that Benny Begin has said today, and exactly why he was so mistaken in what he said.
I don't know. I really don't know. I've been dealing with this issue this way or the other for 30 years or so. I was for 10 years, 11 years, member of the Foreign and Security Committee in the Knesset. I was 4 years or so for something in the Israeli cabinet. I've never seen these numbers come up. I had to dig them I didn't come up when I searched with an article, with a composition, with a university seminar in this country that assembled the numbers. There are more numbers. There are more numbers, pertinent numbers. And there are more pictures, pertinent pictures that we in memory are going to show in the next couple of weeks or so. They printed these numbers, I think they published last week, but it's going to be a series. It's not in my name. It's on memory, doesn't matter. So people satisfy themselves with the following. When they were told that there's a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, they said, well, if they say so, there must be a humanitarian crisis, because it's not difficult to show poor kids on the road and poor families. Maybe some of you are aware of the fact that life expectancy in Gaza today, or in recent years, is a little higher than that of the United States of America. Who told them that? Yeah, you need an effort. The only one who has been dealing with it is my boss, Yigal Carmon, and we plan to issue these numbers and these pictures 6, 7, 8 months ago. We missed it. But now it's the time, because the propaganda goes on, the suffocation. It was so contagious that our military participated in this ball game. They said, yes, and for now we have to ship a part. I was asked, though I would not directly answer it, a part of the reasoning put forward for funneling Qatari money into Gaza was that unless it is being done and the Europeans dilute their contributions and diluted them in recent years, if this is not done, crisis, and then disease, and you know the stories and the scenarios. It could have been real, but you see, I don't think it's possible to. It is not compatible with the numbers. Yes, there are poor people in Gaza. There are poor people everywhere. There are poor people in the best, richest societies. Some people don't do this, don't do that, and they go on welfare as long as there is welfare. So, but I don't know. I think it should be done. We publish in memory. It is being published in English, and memory is being well read, especially in the United States, also in Europe. Members of Congress, maybe more importantly, their aides read it. The secretaries read it. The Secretary of State and the Defense and the Home Security. We do many things around it. So we hope we don't have that loudspeaker, only this loudspeaker. So, but it's important. I hope people will follow on. I think it's an important issue that must be dealt with. And as my father used to have said, very optimistically, all people of goodwill will follow it. But it reminds me of a story, let me in a minute, that Dan Meridor told me 30 years ago. And Adlai Stevenson ran for president. And Adlai Stevenson ran for president. And he was an egghead, as you remember. He was, I think, a president of a university, an intellectual, not a politician. And in one of the railway stations that he met in the train that they take, the candidates, he told them, a lady came up to him and said, after the speech, fiery speech, Mr. Stevenson, every decent American will vote for you. And he said, yes, thank you, but we need a majority. So everyone of goodwill.
Okay, that's a great way to end. Thank you very much, Ben Bagan. I want to thank everyone for coming, also for the very, very large number that joined us on Zoom. I think we had a record number of people joining us on Zoom today. We have another event on Zoom on Wednesday, 8:45 Israel time, about the lawfare, about the legal, the use or misuse of international law against Israel. So you can join us on Zoom for that. Find the details on our Facebook page or our website, or you can email me, paulg@begancenter.org.au. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Benny Bagan.
עם הצ'לי הקטן. אבל